welcome to the Kyuzo Brazilian Jiu Jitsu Podcast. So this is our first episode in our new format. So we've built ourselves a little studio. Some of you might have been following us for a few years. Hopefully you've seen a previous episode. If you haven't, welcome along. Our previous episodes came during COVID from my attic or from here on the mat in the gym, chatting to a few of our students and a few other people as well over the years. So we're in a little bit of a new format. We've been asked and tasked, I suppose, by people around commenting and asking us about when it was coming back and what we were going to do about it. So we've got it together. New YouTube channel, so please do subscribe to that today. New format, as I said, we built this little, I don't want to call it a studio. It probably would be giving it a bit of an aggrandizement if to call it that. But we've certainly got ourselves a nice little area here in the back to do it and to talk about it. And we'll be coming to you pretty regularly. I'll also be grabbing a few guests over the next coming months. Perhaps to talk a little bit about the things in Jiu-Jitsu that we don't really talk about. I'm not really all that interested in talking about how often people train or what their favorite strength and conditioning program is and stuff like that. Although that stuff can be interesting. I'm not saying I won't do that. But I'm looking to try and speak to guests and people who use Jiu-Jitsu in an alternate manner. So people who are using Jiu-Jitsu to perhaps get over some physical or mental ailment, perhaps use the Jiu-Jitsu for their job, or have an interesting story to tell about how they found Jiu-Jitsu and how it's helping them. So this is what our podcast is all about. So stay tuned, subscribe, and keep listening in. Later on, we're going to be talking a little bit about Jiu-Jitsu culture. We had some technical issues with the podcast, some audio issues. So this is actually my third time recording this episode, would you believe? But it did give me an opportunity to come back and go to Instagram and ask a few questions that did come up in the previous couple of attempts. So I've got a few comments from people that we can go through later on, as well as a few bits and pieces that we're going to talk about. We're going to be in particular talking about Jiu-Jitsu culture as it pertains to the rules and environment that you're training in. So stay tuned for that. First up though, housekeeping stuff. I have to let you know how to contact us. Barry@kyuzo.ie for any suggestions of future guests, episodes, anything or comments like that. If you want to send them via email, that's perfectly okay. @GrapplerMan or @Kyuzo Jiu-Jitsu. You'll find us really easy on Instagram. On the @GrapplerMan page, every now and again, I'll put up a question box for stuff like this, for interviews. If I have a guest coming on, that you'll be able to prompt your questions for them too. And if you want to receive a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu newsletter once a week, written by me, never written by AI, that's another thing I have to say, never written by ChatGPT, always written by me, each Monday, on kyuzo.ie, you can go there and you can subscribe to our newsletter. You'll receive into your inbox our blogs, some training advice tips, my own personal training log as well, which I like to post out, including, you can read this up on @GrapplerMan or grapplerman.com today, how I lost 7 kgs to try and compete in the UK Masters last weekend. Not something I'd recommend. Which brings us right through, segues nicely in a professional manner to what the last weekend was about here at Kyuzo. So we had a really busy one. We had UK Masters on Sunday. This is a tournament for over 30s and up, right the way up. I think I saw Masters 6, maybe Masters 7 on the mats. On what would that make me? So if I'm Masters 4, I'm 46. 5, 6, I guess that would make somebody 60 plus. Amazing, right? On the mats there on Sunday. That was over in Hereford in the UK. I painted myself into a corner about 12 days before, so I was due to compete at under 94 kilos, Masters 4, and then when the division came out, there was nobody at 94, but there was somebody at 88, under 88. Now, the last time the scales showed 88 was a couple of years ago, and I was walking around about 95 in the kimono last week. The other option was to go down to Masters 2 at 94, which I said maybe I'll do that, but it turns out that division was going to be at 10 a.m. And I wouldn't have made it over on the flight. So I said, right, okay, it's either don't compete at all or be 88 kilos in 12 days time. So I did okay. That's all detailed there on grapplerman.com. I put it down, how I cut the weight and how I brought my calories down and brought down my water down, and then how I screwed it up and the scales were different to mine here in the gym, and I had to lose a kilo in about an hour. So it's all up there. It's not something I recommend. I always say to people, make sure that you're comfortable and on weight. Don't go doing something stupid just on the basis of wanting to. You're better off fully fed, full of energy, full of beans, your muscles full of glycogen, fully hydrated, stepping onto the mat, feeling satiated and happy and not feeling hungry and dehydrated. The only time I tell people to cut weight is if it's really important. So if it's a really important tournament and they feel they can do better at in the lower weight class, they feel they're a little underpowered or whatever. Or B, they walk around generally over fat. Not overweight, I don't like that term. Over fat is the term that I much prefer. In other words, they're just lazy. So if you're just being lazy and you're just saying, well, I can still eat pizzas and, have beers and compete at 94. And I am fond of a pizza and a beer from time to time. But if you're just over fat, generally lazy, and you're not putting too much effort into your diet and nutrition, well, now is the time to maybe think about it and go a little bit more seriously. Give yourself the best chance of competing at the best possible level you can. So I don't recommend weight cutting, like I said, but if you're going to do it right. And don't, well, you can do it the way I did it. It wasn't particularly right, but you can definitely do it the way I did it. But do think about it, sort of carefully. The other thing that we had was on Saturday, just before we flew out. Brian, who's our first time competitor there. 50. I don't want to do Brian a disservice, but getting his age wrong. I think he's 52. First time competing jiu-jitsu. I think he's trained about 3 years now. Started not long ago with his son. And competed on Sunday. Champion. First ever tournament at the age of 52 or 51, I can't remember. So great achievement, remarkable achievement for him. So delighted to see that. And Brian's probably good boys, and we had a good trip together as well. Let's push on to the next thing, which is the Josh Barnett seminar. One of those. Sometimes I get people in for seminars, and it's to advance the jiu-jitsu curriculum here. So you're bringing in people like Felipe Andrew or somebody like that. And other times it's so I can meet people. And this was one of those occasions, because I've always found Josh Barnett, former UFC heavyweight champ, catch wrestling champ, catch wrestling sort of aficionado, one of the people to push catch wrestling as an art form in mixed martial arts generally. And of course, like Pride veteran, I've seen him fight everybody. And actually what I did was when I went into his, I had a bit of a wait in a petrol station waiting to pick him up. And I sat down, I said, I'm going to go through his, just have a look on Sherdog and just have a look through his record. And when I was looking down, these are all people he had fought, all these people I admired when I first came up and beaten almost all of them. And like Pedro Hazo, Randy Couture, Semi Shield, I can't even, Big Nog, you name it, he's fought them. He's been in the cage with them, been the UFC heavyweight champion, Strike Force, Pro, all over the world. So to have an opportunity to meet him, let alone train with him and learn from him, was a pleasure for this guy who grew up with late 90s, early 2000s MMA. So a real treat. Plus, I got so much out of the seminar as well in terms of how he trained, how he talks about the martial arts, how he talks about grappling in general. We got to have a great chat on the way down here in the car for a couple of hours about rules of catch wrestling, Pride, ADCC, IBJJF. We had a real great powwow about stuff like that. He's a really interesting guy, quite an intense kind of fella. Very smart, very intelligent. And one of the guys come up there to the seminar brought him a magnificent sausage roll from Bread 41, which I will be visiting in Pearse Street as well. He's on the hunt. Josh is on the hunt for the perfect sausage roll in Europe. So he reckons Dublin's a winner so far. But it was great. It was superb. And I hope you got to train. If you didn't get to train with Josh on this occasion, and you do get the opportunity at some future stage, it is definitely a very different seminar to what you're used to. And I would highly, highly recommend it. It was super. Okay, so let's get to the topic of the day. First, I'm going to have a slurp of coffee. This is from Bua on Moby Road, and it's good. And good coffee is quite rare, more rare than you'd think. So, this podcast is essentially about gym culture, and it was kind of inspired a little bit along the lines of by somebody sending me something that they knew would irritate me and annoy me. They sent me I get that, by the way. I don't know if you've got friends like that who send you WhatsApp messages and links to things that go, hey, have a look at this, and the sole purpose is to irritate you and get you going off on one and having a rant. But this was about this was a small video on Instagram about the culture in Gracie Barra gyms. So, for those of you who don't know Gracie Barra, GB, or whatever, Gracie Barra, some of you people might pronounce it. Gracie Barra is essentially, it's the largest jiu-jitsu organization in the world. It's a big affiliation full of clubs. They're international. They're huge in Brazil, huge in the United States, very big in the UK, and big worldwide. They were the first to really codify a lot of things like uniform rules, modes of behavior, instructor programs, and stuff like that. So they get this kind of reputation as kind of a McDonald's-like jiu-jitsu gym. In other words, that the people like to run them down as though they're, kind of culty or very commercial and so on. And they are quite a commercial operation. They're a very successful commercial operation. What I would say is that every single Gracie Barra gym I've ever been to, and everybody I've ever trained with from Gracie Barra, has been a perfectly normal jiu-jitsu guy. I have never noticed any difference whatsoever other than the fact that they wear the same uniform. And I think some of their sponsored athletes don't do that. I've never noticed anything strange or unusual. I've never seen any, and I've seen some strange and unusual behavior in jiu-jitsu gyms over the years, and in martial arts gyms generally, which we'll get into later. But I've never noticed anything weird or culty or McDonald's-like about Gracie Barra. They might not be to everybody's taste, but what I do find is that online, they are definitely the target of a lot of abuse, and I think they're an easy target because of the stuff that they put out there. Which, by the way, as I'm going to go through now, I think is all perfectly normal. So the first thing, there were three main points that this guy, who was a Gracie Barra instructor, was trying to give an introduction to the culture. And the first one was asking for water. Second was waiting to be called and asking for permission to join the class when you were late. And the third was sitting a certain way in class, which I think was cross-legged. So let's start with that, right? Let's go backwards. And people were commenting down below, was like, no one's going to tell me how to sit. You're not going to tell me when I can get a drink or not get a drink, and you're not going to make me apologize for being late and come on the mats. So let's start with sitting a certain way. Actually, we do this here as well. We just don't allow people to laze around. As long as you're sitting attentively or you're paying attention to what's being taught. If you've got an instructor in the middle of the room, we actually say to people, don't lie. Don't, splay your feet and point the soles of your feet at the person in front of you. Sit attentively or stand attentively, and help us to coach the class. And there's a reason for that. Is because you can turn around, you can say, oh, but I don't need to do that. I can sit whatever the hell way I want. And yeah, okay, you can. But you got to remember as well that you're dealing with younger people as well. And when you're dealing with kind of young teens who kind of, always want to affect the attitude of not being very interested, kind of scoffing, culturally that becomes a real problem over time. And if you've got people just getting up, wandering around, talking to each other while you're trying to teach, it's very disruptive for the class. So you have to instill a culture. If you've got 30, 40 people in the class and one or two of them are kind of messing around, it can be very distracting for everybody else in the room as well. So that's part of culture. It's part of being respect for the person who's teaching you. And I would say that's not a martial arts thing. That's generally a thing, generally a thing. This person's here to teach. I'm here to learn. I'm going to pay attention, sit attentively, walk around, have a look, do whatever you want, but don't slouch, don't laze, don't lie on your side like you're on the cover of Men's Health. You just want to sit properly and pay attention. And I don't think that's a big deal. And I would say, by the way, that even in the academy that's making that point and made the video, I doubt it's that big a deal anyway. I think it's just somebody saying, hey, try to be more like this. Waiting at the edge of the mat when late, and then asking permission to join. I don't think that's very martial artsy either. I think that's just called manners. So if I walked into a lecture or anywhere else and I was late, I was due to be there at 8 o'clock and I was there at 8:05, I would open the door gingerly and I would go, "Hi, sorry, is it okay if I come in?" Just to be nice and polite. I'm the one who's late. It's my fault. I'm not going to wander in and say, "Hey, I'm paying you, motherfucker. Get out of my way. I'm going on the mats here and I don't care who knows it." If I'm late for a session, if I'm late for a class, I say this to my guys, just wait at the edge of the mat, ask to join, and then come on in. Reason being, again, if you're a 45-year-old man, it's one of my black belts does it every single time. He's very often late, which is another thing. But he stands at the edge of the mat, I give him the nod, I say, "Yeah, come on, let's go." What you're doing there is you're trying to say to people, look, it's fine for that guy, for Al. He's a very respectful kind of guy. But again, you've got 14, 15, 16-year-olds coming on, swaggering on. I can come in, I can do what I want when I want. And if you're teaching that, pretty soon that becomes kind of viral in your culture as well. And I've seen it happen. So it's just manners. I don't think there's anything wrong with that one. The other one's asking for water. So asking when you can go for a drink of water. So that's a mixed bag because, you don't want to be asking somebody, a grown man, as a grown person, as an adult, you don't want to be asking for permission to get water, do you? I mean, I don't particularly want to either. But if you're in the middle of a round and you're in the middle of sparring and some guy just gets up and goes, "I'm going for water," and you've got a 5-minute round on the clock, isn't that a bit crap? That would ruin your session, wouldn't it? It would certainly ruin one of your rounds. So if you have a culture where you turn around and you say, "Okay, I don't go for water whenever I want. I go for water at the water breaks between rounds, after instruction or anything like that." Same thing. I'm trying to teach a technique. I'm trying to teach something complex. And then somebody just gets up and wanders off in the middle of it and just goes for a drink. Do I have to teach that again? Do I have to call them back and say, "Hey, did you catch that? Because there was a really important point there. There was a safety point there." So I don't think that's a big deal. I think if you want to make a big deal out of it, I think you do. And again, if this is something that happens in your gym, and you don't like it, why don't you go find another gym? Why complain about it? Just go somewhere else. But down in the bottom in the comments, again, I broke a golden rule of mine, which is never read the comments. But I had a look down and I said, do people actually care about this? And there was a mixed bag, in fairness. There was a few people saying kind of what I'm saying. I said, this does just sound like manners. But down in the comments was like, "Hey, I'm paying for that class. No one's going to tell me when to go for water." And I thought that's a really unusual transactional thing to say, because at the end of the day, if I paid for a college course, I wouldn't expect to be able to just wander in and out when I wanted to either. If I'm paying the money, but I'm not guaranteed the education, and I don't control the culture when I walk in, even though I'm paying. Like if I pay for a hotel room, I don't get to, I don't know, shit on the floor and then walk back out and just say, "Hey, I paid my money. I can do what I want in this hotel room." There are limits to what we can do, and we accept that even if we are paying a membership or paying for a class, that there are certain things that we can and can't do within the culture of that environment. And so I don't think that's a goer. I don't think that transactional nature of things, I think, really applies. But onto kind of comments about it. I gotta put my glasses on, isn't it? Old man stuff. So I did ask a little bit about it, and I got some people to send in their comments and their when I can find them, I definitely did. And I asked for a few questions. So I'll go through them one by one because I think some of them are quite good. Some of them are a little bit repetitive, so I'll just take a few or kind of the highlights of them, because some of them were a little bit repetitive. A lot of stuff about bowing, shaking hands and stuff like that. I'll take this one. Bowing or greeting people in belt order. Like I have to ignore someone until I see the black belt. Does that actually happen anywhere? So you have to, I know it used to happen in Taekwondo when I was in Taekwondo years ago. So I had to go to the black belt first, and then the red belt, then the brown belts, then the purple belts, then the blue belts, and then eventually end up with the white belts. That was how you greet everybody when you walked in. And I did think that was weird, to be honest. And that's one of the reasons that I left Taekwondo, and I was quite rebellious when I did, was around stuff like that. Like that there was it wasn't just a hierarchy of skills, there was also a hierarchy of who you should say hello to first, and how you should greet one. I'll tell you a quick one actually. When I started in Taekwondo, everybody got called sir, which was fine. You shook their hands, you say, hello, sir, hello, sir, hello, sir. Then like sort of a new diktat came from the higher power. And that's what that you should only call black belts, sir. Everybody else could be called by their first name. Hey, John. Hey, Paul. Hey, Brian. And then you went to the black belts and you would say, hello, sir. And then it was, well, now at third degree, you say, hello, Mr. Smith, sir. So if they're third degree or higher. And if they're master, or which I think was 6th degree or higher, or maybe 4th degree or higher, hello, Master John Smith, sir. And you had to say all this kind of stuff. And I thought, well, where's this all coming from? And I think it was an example of like a culture out of control. So it started out as decency and respect, and then it became, no, respect me. Give me more respect than the others. And I think that's when it kind of gets out of control, isn't it? So I think that's what you're talking about there. Greeting people in belt order. No, not for me. Not for me. I think that would be a little strange. Bound to a picture on the wall and long-winded speeches. Here, I'm fond of a long-winded speech myself now. Let's not go overboard here. Bound to a picture on the wall, though. Definitely one of those things that comes from probably from the judo element of things. So if you go into a judo academy, there's usually a picture of Kano on the wall. I think in some Japanese academies, there used to be a picture of the emperor. So the emperor plus Kano. And you would bow. But let's put that in a British context. Is there any difference, or is there an Irish equivalent of having the king's picture on the wall? I don't know. Maybe a picture of Jack Charlton or JFK. So bound to a picture on the wall and long-winded speeches. Yeah, it'd be a bit unusual. And actually, similarly in Taekwondo, we had Heel Show, the grandmaster of our association. There was at belt testings and gradings, there would be a big photo of him, and we would have to bow to him. Yeah, that is weird. Long-winded speeches. Yeah, it's very tempting sometimes when you've got a room full of people in front of you and you want to make a point about, say, gym culture or how hard you should train. I can tell you it's hard to stop because suddenly everybody's listening to you, and then you're also going, but I don't think I've got my point across yet, so maybe I should say some more, and maybe I should some more. Yeah, if you are a jiu-jitsu coach out there, keep it short and sweet. If you've got a point to make it quick. People want to go home. Uniform codes, like why can't I just wear a safe and clean gi? Yeah, I can see that one, but I can also see the point in uniform codes. I'll give you an example of that as well. So we used to do blue, white, or black, we used to say here. And the reason we said blue, white, or black was because eventually if somebody was going to go compete at IBJJF, they were going to have to go and get a new kimono if they ended up going out buying something that they saw online or their mother saw online and it was khaki green or it was pink or something like that. So we said, look, no, only ever buy blue, white, or black. And that way you'll have a gi that you can use in tournaments and competitions, and we're not going to turn around to you and say, I'm sorry, man, you got to go buy another €100 worth of stuff. So it's not always to make sure that you buy the gym gi. I would say that. It's often got a practical use, so I would ask about that as well if you're there, and don't just assume that it's because you've joined a cult. Assume maybe the positive in things instead of the negative and say, well, why do I have to have this certain type of uniform? It could just be the look of the gym. They like that when they walk out on the mats, they see everybody in a white gi. I notice a few gyms like that. I know others, which is kind of like a little bit similar to the way we were, which was that they didn't want to turn it into a fashion show where everybody tried to get the coolest gi, before everybody else. And then you got some guy, and this was a major issue for us here. You got a bunch of guys buying the latest Shoyo, buying the latest Lucky gi at the time, stuff like that. Coming in with their gis with patches all over them and all this kind of jazz. All good, fine, no problem, really. But then we'd have other guys, because we're in a very diverse economic area, I suppose you say, we'd have other guys who are barely affording to come training and have one gi that's worn through and ragged. and they're trying to wash for every session, get back for every session. I always felt it was a little bit rubbing their nose in it a little bit. So to try and make it a little bit nicer for them, and to try and make it a little bit more accessible for them, we just put in a uniform code. Now we just say, by the way, it's as long as it's one color and it's clean. That's what we say all the time now. Just clean, hygienic, because there's so many cool styles out there, and some of them are really nice. I bought myself a pink one to celebrate that pink tatami one, by the way, to celebrate the removal of that uniform code. The other thing, though, about uniform codes is appropriateness as well. And actually, this came up recently. I can't believe I'm going to talk about this here. So you guys can look this one up yourself. I'm not going to go too detailed into it. There's a B-team rash guard that says Bulls on it. It looks really cool because it looks like the Chicago Bulls rash guard from the 1990s. That great Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen team. That you may have admired or you may have watched on The Last Dance on Netflix. But the Bulls in this case has a different sexual innuendo. It's got a connotation to it. I didn't know about this. I found out about this about 2 weeks ago because I don't follow any of that stuff online, that stupid gym war thing they have in the Nogi scene over in the US. With Craig Jones and Gordon Ryan and all that kind of stuff. I don't follow that. I'm not interested in any of that. So I only found out that what that Bulls rash guard meant. It wasn't something I was familiar with, and I've had to say to a couple of people, don't wear that again. Why? Not because it doesn't have anything particularly offensive on it, but sooner or later someone's going to say, do you know what that rash guard means? And one of those guys might be a 15-year-old that we have training in the adults class, and that's just not appropriate for them. It's just not what jiu-jitsu is about. So we have to have some standards, right? All right. You might disagree with me there. That's fine. I don't care. Best thing about jiu-jitsu. Clears the anxiety slate. Yeah, and a good culture and a good environment, definitely. If you're coming up somewhere that you really enjoy. Worst, ringworm. Is that in the culture? Well, it is a culture, isn't it? No, that's more of a fungus. I think you only say culture of a bacterial culture, don't you? The time to get there and park up. The time to get... I think you're just talking about parking. You're just complaining about parking. That's nothing to do with culture. That's just got to do with city planning. It's like the Alan Partridge podcast then. All right, next one. This is a positive one. You can travel anywhere in the world and train in 90% of gyms anyway. Yeah, actually, and that's something I say to my son all the time. That you're not just gaining a sport, you're gaining a tremendous network. So you can go anywhere in the world, walk into any gym, like 99% of gyms, and it'll be like, oh, hey, we've got a visitor. Come train, come learn, come on, let's see what we can do together. And you'll get a class and you'll get a role and you'll make a new friend there. I've walked into gyms like in other cities, walked in and like 20 minutes later, somebody's asking me for dinner. And saying, oh, no, come out with us tonight. We're doing this. Where are you going? Oh, you want to get a ticket for here? You want to get a ticket for there? It's brilliant. It really is a worldwide network, and that's one of the best things about jiu-jitsu culture, I think. I think one of the things, just to come back to the uniform code, one of the things that does kind of surprise people is when people have a uniform code in their academy, and you either have to buy or rent a gi when you get there. So if you're ever traveling, don't assume that your gi is going to be okay, or you're going to be able to just wander in your multicolored tie-dye kimono. Some places do have a restriction, and you might have to rent or buy a gi when you get there. Very often that causes complaints. You won't believe it. They made me buy a gi. Well, you did have the choice to not train, but sometimes it is difficult. I know when you get to the front desk and you're suddenly being told your gi isn't good. So just be aware that it can very often be white, clean gi might be the way to go. And some gyms, by the way, as well, just while we're on it, they insist upon spats and long sleeve rash guards. Some gyms, for hygiene reasons. Maybe one of the bad things could be the clicks that start after a while. We could go into that quite a lot. I think in human environments, clicks are like they're almost certain to happen. You have to really work hard. And I think one of your jobs, almost as a jiu-jitsu coach, is to really, really work hard at avoiding people going into those cliquey kind of relationships, the first thing is that it creates an us versus them within your academy. And usually the first click that develops is, hey, you know, you and I are the only ones who really train properly here. You know, those guys, he's not training seriously. I heard one guy walked in here, he's gone now, but he walked in here and he asked somebody, he said, hey, what do you think of hobbyists? You know, like, I mean, in other words, meaning I'm serious, everyone else here is a hobbyist. You know, me and you and I, we're serious, right? And, you know, they're just the hobbyists. So already you're setting yourself apart. And I think we work really, really hard on that. Like, we work really hard on avoiding that kind of thing. You know, you can't keep people from forming WhatsApp groups and stuff like that. You can't stop people from being friends and getting into groups because people, you know, flock together. But what you can definitely do is you can turn around and say, listen, that is not acceptable. So if you're training, then make sure you're inviting other people into those training sessions. Make sure that people are being brought along with you, and definitely avoid WhatsApp groups and Snapchat groups, etc., where you just complain about the class and people in the class, because those things can quickly become bullying. And I know that through educational experience and through working with groups for over years. That thing of where, hey, I don't like rolling with John. Do you? No, I don't like rolling with it either. He kind of always hurts me, or, you know, his fingernails are always long. And then pretty soon, John gets known as Freddy Krueger, and then everybody starts avoiding rolling with John instead of somebody walking up to John and saying, hey, John, could you trim your fingernails a bit more often? So things like that, yeah, I know. But I think that's just human nature. I don't think that's just jiu-jitsu. Good. Made friends from different backgrounds that I probably otherwise never would have. Oh, wow, I love that about this. So this is actually one of the best things about jiu-jitsu is the diversity that you meet. So the diverse people that you meet. So you're training and the guy sitting beside you on the mat is a doctor, or he's a carpenter, or he's between jobs, or he's just recently, he arrived in Ireland 6 weeks ago and he doesn't speak a word of English, or any other number of things, and or he's 15 or he's 50, and you end up being great mates with them and great buddies with them. One of the things that I really say that I love about Kyuzo and I love about what we do here is that the young fellas that we have who are like, so the older guys are from everywhere. They're from all over Dublin. They come in from everywhere, even from Kildare, places like that. The younger kids are all really local. So around here, on one side, we've got really economically poor areas. On the other hand, we've got some quite wealthy areas, and we've got lots of different types of kids who come together and they all train and they all meet each other, and they all meet each other from different backgrounds. And that doesn't always happen in other sports, because other sports kind of tend to draw from the one school or from the one pool very often. So it's brilliant like that. And the other great thing about that is as they get a bit older, suddenly the lad who maybe hasn't seen a lot of this in his life is sitting down and he's talking to people, he's talking to adults who work in jobs that he could do, and he suddenly starts to open his horizon. So he comes in and he sees people going, hey, this guy isn't that much different from me, and he's an engineer. Okay, this guy isn't that much different from me, and he owns his own business. All right, this is something maybe I could do, you know. So there's a great diversity of opinions, there's a great diversity of backgrounds. You got, you know, lads who are, you know, out of the street at the weekends and they're training with a guard on Monday night. So there's great stuff like that, and it's really diverse and really good. So yeah, I take that point. It's really good. Oh, this is your point as well. Your second one is bad. Sometimes I wish we didn't bother with grades. Still not convinced they're needed. Yeah, I broadly agree. In some ways. So definitely when I came out of Taekwondo, I was almost like, why do we even bother with belts? Belts are ridiculous. What sort of adult requires the validation of a thin piece of cloth that you wrap around your waist? And the answer is a serious amount of them, apparently. Because I do find them really motivational and really good for certain people who are very goal-oriented, who might not have the goal of who might not understand these sort of intrinsic goals of becoming better and getting better at competition. So for certain types of people, getting that blue belt is like getting that stripe. I couldn't believe it when I gave a guy a stripe one time, and he came over to me afterwards and he went, "This is the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. I can't." And I was going, "Oh." I said, "Whoa, the greatest thing that's ever happened to you yet." Just hang in there. But he was about 19, and it was the first time probably anybody had ever given him a medal or an award or anything like that. And yeah, he poured it all on there. So there's use for some people. For others, I think, you can take it or leave it. Something we say when I give out stripes, I don't so much do it as belts. With belts, because again, I've enough long-winded speeches to make. Going back to the previous message, something I say when I give stripes is like, this is either a small piece of tape that somebody's tied weirdly on your belt, or it's a great step upon a journey that you're going to be on for a long, long time. And it can be either, it can be both, or it can be anywhere in between. And it's up to you, the meaning that you attach to it. So I don't try and sanctify or make any great pronouncements about what a new belt or a black belt or anything like that means. But you have a very personal relationship with how you progress. And that goes, I think, for belts as well. The other thing that it's really, really handy for is it is a very quick and very easy division maker and anti-sandbag device for competitions and tournaments. So many sports, I think, would wish for something like this to actually literally say, no, you are in that category until somebody says otherwise. And you must compete at this level or that level. Where that's bad, by the way, and where I think actually we're not helped out, is at the higher levels. So brown and black belt, if you've been off for a long time, so if you were a competitor and you were quite good, and then you come back, there's no brown belt novice category. It's all the brown belts together. And people ask me sometimes, by the way, it comes up quite a lot because of like tournament organization, stuff like that. It's like, why don't more brown and black belts compete? And I think that's a big part of it. Because if you've got your black belt and then, you have a baby, you or your wife have a baby, and then your job takes over, or you get an injury and you're out for 2-3 years, and now you want to come back and compete, but you're not going to be as competitive, and you look at these other guys who've been in the division, especially in a small country like Ireland, you go, well, I can't compete with that guy. I know I'm not going to beat him. And I don't have the time or the energy or the opportunity to compete at that level anymore. So I would like a subdivision of that. So where adult black belt is adult black belt, and this is adult black belt, Division B. I think that really affects brown and black belts in particular, because there's no lower league for them. There's no entry level league for them to come back from having previously competed or even competing at the first time. So, I think that's something. In terms of, are they needed? No, I don't think so. I was never really motivated by it, to be honest. And I'm still not. I would train whether it's, whether they were there or not. But they do matter to a lot of people, and I think they definitely have their uses. So that's the comments. That's the bits and pieces. So I think from our perspective here, just to give a final kind of word on the Kyuzo perspective of things. We built the culture here, and we build the culture through the coaches and through filtering down through the top members. So little things in your culture, I think, are really, really important. And the old saying is like, how you do one thing is how you do everything. I remember a fella telling me you can always tell the quality of somebody's gym by the state of their toilets. And I thought that was an interesting thing to say. It's like, well, no, if he cares about that, and if he cares about those kind of things, he'll care a lot about other elements as well. By the way, we're in a really old building. Our building is pushing 40 years old. So the toilets are basic, but they're clean. They're always clean, sparkling, I hope. So I can see why people might have issues with jiu-jitsu culture. I can see why people might have problems with the things that they have to do when they walk into a gym. But ultimately, I'd say if you're really uncomfortable with something and you really, really don't want to do it, then just don't go there anymore. Go somewhere else where it's more relaxed or more laissez-faire and you can do what you want. One thing I would say, having been in a number of organizations and having seen this over the years and having read up on a lot of stuff around culture, is that some of those things are in place for a reason. And lax cultures where, for example, there's, not a great divide between adult and children, where there's not a great understanding of that the culture needs to protect the younger members from exposure to things like alcohol and drugs or sexual innuendos or sexual advances, even like that. That does tend to expand quite a bit over time. And it's kind of like tendrils that can crawl from one area into another. I'm being quite general there because I don't want to mention specific examples, but there would be, I think anybody who's been around martial arts long enough has seen, let's just say, inappropriate relationships between younger girls and men who are definitely old enough to know better. And I always say that you can always, and people, by the way, in child protection and in the sort of safeguarding area would tell you this, that it doesn't start that way. What it starts with is a cultural idea that this is okay for the black belt, the grandmaster, the guy with all the stripes on his belt, the guy with the coolest kimono. He can swan around and he can say and do what he wants, and there's elements there that need to be controlled at a very early stage, at those early funnel points before they expand into cultural norms, into your academy, into your gym, into your association or organization. And all that stuff is really important. Just to finish on a really serious note there, I suppose. Okay, that's us for today. That's going to do it. That's just about 40 minutes, which is about our limit. I hope you enjoyed. Please give us comments, like, subscribe. Like I say, brand new YouTube channel here today. Brand new format, and I'll be having a couple of really interesting chats, and I've got a couple of really interesting guests come in the next few months. So do keep in touch, do keep an eye on it. Make sure to comment, let us know what you think. Send emails, send whatever. You can use any of the contact details. Is it really that hard to find anybody these days? Do I have to repeat myself with all the ats and the things? I don't think so. I'm sure you'll be fine. And thanks very much for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.